intro. What happened to the intro, bro? You set this one up, so.
What do you mean? You're always.
It's always on there, bro. Man, that's crazy. Nobody's on though. That's good.
Look, we got two now.
The Olsinski Law Firm is an official sponsor of Top Bin 90, specializing in personal injury, criminal defense, DWI, family law, and workers' compensation. The Olsinski Law Firm provides professional, trusted legal services to clients facing a variety of challenges. With a team of experienced attorneys dedicated to protecting your rights, the Olsinski Law Firm is the legal support you can count on.
Hi, I'm Justin Olsinski, the founding partner of the Olsinski Law Firm. Me and my wife started this firm back in 2010 with the sole purpose of providing excellent service to our clients, giving our clients a personal touch because we had worked in bigger firms where we saw that not happening. We handle criminal defense matters, civil personal injury, wrongful death, workers' comp, and family law matters. We have a team of attorneys that care about the outcome of your case, and we will fight to make sure that you get the justice you deserve.
Hello and welcome to episode 51 of the Top Bin 90 podcast. The season is officially back, and we've got a lot to talk about with Charlotte FC's positive draw in St. Louis. Unconvincing, in my opinion. We'll also talk about some of the newcomers in this match. Luca De La Torre obviously got some minutes. David Schnegg came in. Also, we've got some fan questions. We'll preview LA Galaxy and what's going on around MLS in match week 1 as well. And for all of that, we've got two of the best minds in MLS here. My co-host, Mr. Brian Bam Mauer Media. How are you today, Brian?
Doing well, man. Had a great watch party there at the pub. Had a good time seeing a lot of people. It was awesome.
Yeah, we had a phenomenal turnout. So thank you all who came. People got beanies, they got beer, and they got soccer and goals. So, and we also have Mr. Vaughn Pullman tonight. Mr. Vaughn, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited. The season's all kicked off now and ready to be here.
Nice. And you told us that you condensed your 25 pages of notes to 4, correct?
Yes. Got it down to 4. It took a lot of cutting the margins.
All right. Nice. Well, let's get started then. Obviously, Charlotte's first official match of the season, right? Like I mentioned, a positive. You're able to take a point away in St. Louis. Brian, you put up a stat today. Only 2 teams that traveled to a Western Conference team were actually able to pull points. So that's positive, right? But it felt very unconvincing in my opinion. Give us just your overall thoughts.
Yeah, I was hoping for a little bit of a hotter start based on just how the team was talking in preseason. Dean was kind of hyping things up a little bit in preseason. It seemed like they were a little bit lackluster. The cohesion that I was hoping for against a team that is a brand new tactical setup, I expected Charlotte to be a little bit more prepared for it. It sounded like there were some structural issues based on my conversation with Dean again today, that there was just some self-inflicted wounds in terms of how they set up structurally and prepared to attack, and fullbacks pulling at the wrong times and not being in position, things like that. So I was hoping for a little bit more from them in that regard, just because this is a group that should be pretty familiar with each other and should be able to kind of handle those situations. Dean also did mention that like St. Louis plays a ton of man-to-man, and so it's a pretty different setup than what they'll have to deal with in a lot of situations. But would still like to know that Charlotte can deal with man or zone.
Yeah. Vaughn?
Yeah, for a team that's been talking about the continuity being an advantage and being a team that has been working to be more front-footed, I think what happened was the game, especially up until St. Louis's goal, it didn't jive with what we've been sold. And so I think the disappointment that a lot of the fan base is feeling after this one was it just left us wanting more. It's okay, we're back trying to look for those positives and glass half full on the situation, but it's more the way that it looked, and the way that it looked was disconnected and too back-footed and not enough chances in our favor, and too many that we conceded, and leaning on a few key moments and specific individuals to save that point.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I want to start off with, Simon Butcher, the way he was chopping us up, and it brought me to, I guess, our first question of the night is how concerned should we be with how easily it felt like St. Louis was just breaking through the lines, Vaughn?
I don't think that we have to be too concerned. It's game one. You don't have to make these, wide sweeping generalizations about either club based off of just this one result. But you're definitely going to face stiffer competition than what St. Louis was throwing at us. And credit to St. Louis. They executed their game plan very well. I think they used that home field advantage to help them through this game, and they had really big performances from Simon Betcher as well as Marcel Hartel. I think they both stood out on the pitch against us.
Yeah, especially that first goal. What a phenomenal ball Simon gave to Hartel. He finished well, but for me, it's like just seeing how easily Tim got outpaced. How it felt like they were caught up in the wrong moments a lot. Brian, what do you make of that?
Yeah, so I feel like, and we've talked about this in our group chat and stuff like that, but I feel like a lot of it was off of the counter. There's another thing that Dean mentioned today. When you turn the ball over in your middle third, and a team that's moving as fast as St. Louis was, and they clearly had drilled, Kalina talked about this as well, that they had drilled that kind of ping it forward to Betcher, who then had a follow-through pass on a one-touch. And they did it 2 or 3 times at least. And Kalina said, that's something they drilled against us. And I think that was just they were prepared for those countering moments in the midfield, and Charlotte wasn't prepared to transition back defensively, and they got caught out time and time again, especially in the second half. Marcel Hartel had found wide open space on the left at least 2 or 3 times where Byrne was just had gone too far up too fast. Before they really had controlled possession, lost it. Byrne was then nowhere near being able to help cover, and that's how the goal happened, and another chance before that as well. And so it just comes down, for me, it's more than the defensive lines or the breaking of the lines. It's just you've got to be able to maintain possession better, especially in your own third and middle third. And then knowing when to kind of make that forward run if you're a fullback on the opposite side. That was what Dean talked about structurally. It was the opposite fullback needs to wait a little bit longer. Midfielders as well, they weren't covering the space behind, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then we saw 3 subs off the get-go from Dean in that second half. Vargas came in, Schnegg came in, and Diani came in. And one of the, for me, a positive is when your important players can connect and pull you out of a tough situation. Obviously, you're 1-0 down. We saw Schnegg connect with Wilfred Zaha. Wilfred Zaha played a beautiful ball to Pep Biel, right, who came in with a phenomenal goal. And just, I guess, talk to me about that positive moment and just that when you're in a tough situation and it's a tough spot to start the second half.
Yeah, you combine well. You have, you bring in your sub, Schnegg getting involved early, I think, as his debut is really a positive moment for him. And just the fact that you have 2 guys that can both just fill in as starters, I think, out of the gate. Is like one of the few positions where I feel like really confident that there's multiple starters in the same spot. And so having two guys that can kind of fill in for each other is great. Dean did mention that he felt Toffolo just wasn't quite up to steam. So I was curious as to whether that was a tactical shift, but he said it just Toffolo hadn't gotten enough reps in preseason. So I don't expect like Schnegg to all of a sudden replace Toffolo as the starter. It seemed like it was more just getting him up to speed minutes-wise. But it was great to see Schnegg come in, help provide some, and just some support offensively. Zaha with a great through ball on the goal. Finish. It's key to have guys like that who aren't getting a ton of looks, still be able to put the one that you have away to give you a draw in this kind of spot.
Absolutely. Vaughn, just speaking on newcomers, obviously two players that we saw, David Schnegg and Luca De La Torre. What did you make of their games?
Let's start with Schnegg because we were talking about him. I think he was largely positive, but I think he definitely added a flavor getting forward. But I think there also was we were more susceptible. It was more sketchy in back. I think that the way that the game opened up, especially towards the end, it was really helter-skelter, and I think it was too high risk for us, and it nearly cost us points altogether. And I think Schnegg played a role in that. So there were positives there, but I think all of the subs, were playing into the sense of urgency. What I think that was probably the biggest positive that I saw out of this was, after we conceded that goal, our team tactic changed, our tempo changed, our need to get forward changed, and we scored that equalizing goal. I think it was 3 minutes after we did the triple sub. So I think credit to Dean for making some of those changes and doing that, and I think part of that also stemmed from Luca De La Torre struggled in this game. I think it was not the best debut that we've seen from some people. I think he struggled to establish tempo. I think he struggled in some of the distribution. I think he struggled moving the ball north and south. I think it was very east-west for him. So some of the things that we have been looking forward to seeing from Luca De La Torre, I think there was a little bit of a letdown in what we were expecting to see from that position. And honestly, I think Gianni stepped in really well once he subbed on for him.
Yeah, and that's a shame, too, just because, he's gotten the reps in preseason. So it's not like, he's unfamiliar. Obviously it's a new club, but like a lot of expectations, he's probably the most important signing we've made this offseason. So, yeah, it was a very underwhelming performance by Luca De La Torre. Brian, anything to add on both Schnegg and Luca?
Well, not on either of them so much as like something that Dean mentioned in the post-match presser was that the team woke up after going down 1-0, and you just mentioned that as well, Vaughn. I think, for me, the big question mark just overall is, like, why is that? Like, why is that? Like, especially after everything they had talked about, again, preseason, being able to get on the front foot, all the things that we've kind of talked about so far, like, the question being, like, why did it take 65 minutes and going a goal down to wake up? And I think that's just, for me, the big question moving forward is, can you change that? Can you flip that switch to where the waking up happens out of the gate?
Well, I think it was also a very conservative approach.
Yeah.
Like I think what happened in this game too was we struggled to find creative ways to break down St. Louis. And credit to them, right? They were doing a great job in their press. They were doing a really good job marking closely, whereas we were giving them so much respect and playing off of them. We were inviting a lot of possession. We were inviting them to come at us, and we were trying to do a lot of shepherding and play wide. And frankly, I think we did an okay job of that. Like, I think Kalina's sentiment of us having good defense, I think that was more stemming from team defense, because by and large, it was more of the same where, we kept the threats far away from goal. Yes, Kalina took a high volume of opportunities that he had to make saves on, but they were largely low risk until end of halves. I think we were crumbling at the end of each half. I think also in the middle, we struggled to find those through balls. We struggled, especially Toklamati, right? Like him handling a back three, I think he really struggled to find space. He struggled to make those off-ball runs. He struggled when he was dropping in. The goal that we conceded, Zaha, right? It was a defender directly on his back. And we weren't having those moments where we were the defender directly on the back. We were playing so far off of them that it just, I think the game plan didn't go our way.
Yeah, and then I think, Brian, you brought this up. There was Kalina 5 shots after a minute 75. There was a 1v1 that he was phenomenal in as well, and so it feels like Kalina's kind of picking up from where he left off. Obviously, he was in match week 1 in the best 11, and which is great for Kalina, but it's bad in terms of like how that looks from Charlotte FC side.
Yeah, it's more of the same. I mean, it's now we've been talking about this since I feel like the end of 2024 was when we first started bringing this up. It's like when you have a goalkeeper of the year kind of season and just having to require those kind of performances and like that many saves. And I mean, he like led the league in saves last year as well. So like it just means a lot of volume is getting through, and it means you're not controlling games, and that's the big change that we just still need to see from this group. I mean, I didn't expect it all to kind of all figure itself out week 1. This is an evolution that's going to need to take place over the course of the season. Similar with like how we kind of approach, I'd say, like Wilfred Zaha last year, I think is, I mean, for Luca De La Torre specifically, is like you got to see a steady progression throughout the course of the year. But like at the same time, we said the pressure is definitely on because like he's the key signing of this evolution that's supposed to be coming. So you got to see some progression throughout, sooner rather than later.
Nice. Vaughn, I'll ask both of you guys because you kind of have a little bit of countering opinions on Liel Abada, right? Vaughn, I'll start with you. What did you make of his game?
I thought he had a really solid performance. I think what we're asking for him to be in terms of defensive work rate, in terms of being involved in the attack, of trying to pick his moments, of trying to be impactful. He didn't find the back of the net. He still didn't ultimately find the score sheet. But when he was subbed off, he was the guy who had the 2 shots on goal for the team. Nobody else had a shot on goal to their credit. So I thought Liel did a good job in several different phases of play. He was clean on the ball, right? Like I think the challenge of him giving the ball away. No, I think he was 9 for 9 on his first passes all the way into the second half. He was closing space. He was doing all of the things that you're asking him to do from a work rate side. And I think that if he is consistent in playing that way, it will bear fruit. We need to see more of it. But I think it was a positive game for Liel Abada.
Yeah, Brian?
Yeah, and I don't really think, and even in my article I wrote, I don't think I said that his performance was all that bad. I think it's more Dean Smith took him out when the game script said you're down a goal and you need a goal, and he looked at his team and he took out Abada.
Yeah.
And so I think
But in the playoffs, Vargas gets the start, takes out Vargas, brings on Abada.
Okay.
So I don't know that is an indictment of Abada in that moment. I think that's just a matter of, we're deep at that position. Both of those guys are going to get their minutes. Both of those guys are going to get those opportunities. And I think the message to both Abada and Vargas is earn the spot, earn the minutes, try to be impactful in those minutes, and that's the motivating factor for them.
I guess, but it's just
we
keep going around in circles about this, but it's like you're a record signing, DP.
100%. I'm like
all
season
the
one
and record signings don't
again
have to
to me.
do this.
Yeah, it goes
We just
season
need to go
1.
cycle by
Let's see
cycle
what you
on
can
this.
do. Season 2, expectations are for you to perform. Season 3, you're starting at a negative, in my opinion, and you have to be impactful. Like again, like you said, I don't think he had a bad game, but it wasn't
bad.
Yeah, it wasn't like, again, if I'm looking to make a switch up out of our front 3, I'm always gonna pick taking Abada off first.
I think that's a big question. Tokolmadi for me had a worse performance, but why is then Dean leaving him on there? If based on what he's seen, whether it's in preseason or throughout the course of training or what have you, he had other solutions on the bench to replace Tokolmadi. He had Archie Goodwin, who we didn't even see either, and then he brought in Tiger Smalls. I'd assume, based on what Dean has been saying, kind of wanting somebody to get over the top and through the back of that back line, and he felt Tiger maybe was a better solution than Archie. But
perfect. That goes into the question from Trent that he sent in. Why was Tiger Smalls the second choice striker ahead of Archie Goodwin? You kind of touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, and Dean talked about it today when I asked him about what because he post-match, he mentioned that Tokolmadi was kind of quiet. And I asked him, can you just kind of dive into that a little bit more? And he said specifically, not being physical enough on the center backs, not being, his movement not being good off the ball, like what Vaughn said earlier, and then also just not being able to get behind the back line. And I think that's what Tiger Smalls, he thought Tiger was going to be able to bring, was just a little bit more speed behind and getting behind the back line. Didn't pan out. Also only had like 5 minutes to do so, and they were pinned in super deep at that point. But that's what it looked like the strategy was for Dean, was to just try to, like, out of the two, pick somebody who could maybe nick a late run. And he actually had one decent look where that seemed like it had potential, but then he just couldn't make the final pass. And so, I think that's what Dean was looking for, was just who could kind of spread the field a little bit more.
Nice. Vaughn, anything you want to add to that?
Well, and it's what I was saying about Abada and Vargas. I think it's the motivating factors. You want to create competition. You want the guys to fight for those minutes. So yeah, you encourage Tiger to keep training hard. You pick those moments that he can have those minutes, right? You become very predictable if it's always going to be that same sub. If it's always going to be Tokolamati off and Archie Goodwin on, then you're going to really discourage that other player in Tiger Smalls, and you're not going to set those guys up for success. So I think it was picking the moment for Tiger to go on. It also sends a message to Archie to maybe, hey, when you're on, you're going to really have to show up and find those goals. So I think some of it's the messaging as well, and it's what the moment and that opponent called for.
Yeah.
I think it was fine.
Yeah, for sure. I think part of it, what I want to see is whether it's Archie or whether it's Tiger Smalls, there should be somebody that's kind of right there, right behind Tokolamati, kind of like on that right wing battle. We know it can either be Vargas or Abada off the get go. There's a big disparity right now still between Tokolamati and Tiger Smalls, and I just feel like we haven't seen enough of Archie Goodwin to make an assessment on how close he is to replace Tokolamati. Should we need somebody in that striker position to change or affect the game?
Well, and it's what you've also advocated for, right? Like you all off season were saying, hey, I want a veteran striker. I want somebody that's that change of pace, or that veteran leader, or somebody that can nick that goal from a header, or something different, that different flavor. Yeah, right now it's Tiger and Archie and Tokolamati, and that's the rotation.
Nice. Anything else that stood out to you guys about this game in particular that we just haven't gotten a chance to touch on?
I think it was also moments where we were most successful. It was when we fought through pressure, right? Like, I think maybe some of the concern was that there wasn't a lot of build-up play, right?
Yeah.
Even if we had possession, that wasn't the way that we were creating. Pretty much all of our opportunities stemmed from us getting fouled in a transitional moment, being given advantage, play on, and continuing getting the ball forward and into the box. And so I think an emphasis for us is going to be finding ways to get north and south, to play more direct, because I think that ultimately is what hurt us, right? In the way that we gave up our goal to St. Louis was a very direct moment. It was 7 seconds from turnover to back of net passes. It was very, very quick. And so I think we need to up our tempo. We need to play quick. We need to play more vertical than horizontal. And I think we're going to be seeing some adjustments in this coming weeks.
I'd also like to see Zaha stay a little bit higher. I feel like he comes back a lot to get the ball. Obviously, he's just trying to get involved in the game. My concern with that, and you saw it in this game a lot, was Orozco was it harassing him and frustrating him a lot by just having opportunities because he's picking it up, the ball up either in his own half or, at least right around the midline. And those are pretty safe areas to foul. And so you saw anytime he kind of picked the ball deep, Orozco was right on him and willing to kind of just take him down over and over and over again. Same with Wallen was the other guy who was really doing that, especially in the first half. And so Dean made it. There was a question that got brought up that it seemed like this was just going to be a constant story for the team, and Dean made it sound like it was just on the refs to solve that problem. It was like, no, for me, I think you can solve that problem if you play Zaha higher, more, require that he has to find another way to get involved in the game, which is get him the ball, not make him come back to get it. And then also, and this is something that Dean had talked about playing a little bit more centrally. If he's closer to the box, you can't foul him there because the risk goes way higher. I feel like all the time Zaha kind of gets fouled and just harassed is just in these kind of not dangerous areas. And so if you can just put him in more dangerous spots more often, and that's where he's getting the ball, the fouls will just come down because you can't afford to foul him in the box, around the box, at the top of the box, spots like that.
Well, and it's his back to goal.
Yeah,
I think what
that as
happened
well.
was, the goal that we conceded was a bad pass from Harry Toffolo into him.
Yeah.
That was a moment where I would have rather clear the lines, hit it long, and concede possession, which is what we were doing a lot of in the first half.
Yeah.
Right? It was, okay, the pass isn't there, the options aren't there, just clear it and concede possession. And so I think we were trying to control that moment, and we were so spread out because of that. Yeah. Our transitional phase of transition to defense was really, really rough in that moment. And to your point, Zaha getting central, that was when our goal came, right? Yeah. Orozco wasn't in a position where he could be marking him. Yeah. It was, I think, Durkin was the one who fouled Zaha before Zaha found Schnegg, and then back into Zaha. And it allowed Pep Biel to get forward, and when Pep Biel was forward, he was making a ghosting run. They forgot about him. Yeah. Like, what happened was Zaha got the ball back, and by then Biel had found a little pocket of space in the box. And I think all of those, we needed to see more creativity in positional movements, and that's where our goal came from.
Yep. And then I would also, now it made me think about this too, obviously they signed Henry Kessler, not available still, Andrew Privet, did more damage to himself than positive in this game. And I feel like he didn't look good for most of this game. And so for me, I'm curious to see how much of a concern that's going to be, because, obviously, like, replacing Malanda is difficult. He had a really good season 2 years ago, but I just need to see a little bit more from him. What kind of expectations should we have for a guy like Andrew Privet, who, hasn't really, like, set himself up after game one well? I'll start off with you, Brian.
Well, I posted this graphic in the article, and Privet and Ream were extremely isolated, and they were essentially the only two players on average positioning within their own third. They were completely alone. And any center back that is dealing with that kind of situation, especially when you're dealing with a high-pressing team that's getting you 1v1 and pushing the ball forward directly at you, I mean, that's physics at that point, like, right? You're just physiology. The person going backward is going to have a harder time than the person going forward. Like, Kessler won't fix that. Like, that's the situation I think we're in. It's beyond the back line, and I think this is one of the points that Kalina was trying to bring up, that it's like the back line did okay when they had spots that they could do okay in. When you put them in spots where it's like Privet trying to deal with Betcher on the ball, and then Hartel's in space, which is what happened on the goal, and you can't defend that. That's impossible to defend. And so if you put Privet or Kessler or Van Dijk, whoever you want, in a position where you can't defend.
There's a comment saying try Ajiman out. Can't be any worse, Morris and I.
Well, I mean, but my point is it won't get any better. That's my main point. Like, it won't get any better defensively. If we want to talk about ball progression and those other things, that's a different story. But when it comes to the defensive back line and that kind of stuff, like, it won't get, like, until they fix some of those possession issues and where they lose the ball and how their fullbacks and midfield kind of set up when they're in possession or when they're prepared to deal with the counter press, like, that's going to be a bigger key.
Well, and I think it also both Privet and Ream as a combo, it got scary at moments, especially in transition. And so I think the scare is it's how quick they can be in transitional moments.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger scare for me in this game was the controllable moments. There were a few times where Privet would have the ball at his feet and wouldn't release it quick enough, or it looked like he was going to be able to make a turn and find a pass, and he just held on and conceded possession out of bounds on the sideline.
That one particularly.
There were a couple that turned into corners that could have. I mean, and it was a mixed bag. There was some good, right? Like, I think that the narrative of losing Malanda was, oh, we're going to struggle in the box. I think in the box, both Ream and Privet were fine. Yeah. It was when they were in open space that it was really sketchy and something that we need to keep an eye on, because Kessler's going to need to step into that role, or Morrison Ajiman's going to need to step into that role, or summer changes are going to need to happen, because if that's our go-forward center back pairing that are getting the bulk of the minutes and are going to have more and more tired legs through summer. There's some scares there.
Yeah. Dang, I was about to add something amazing and I forgot it, but
So close.
yeah. Also, is there anything that we should read into Brant Brown playing, a player that consistently either sees minutes from the start or, comes off the bench? Or it was just one of these games where, the qualities that Brant has aren't truly, going to affect the game when you're 1-0 down?
Yeah, I don't think, and there's a lot of game scripts where I'm taking Bronico off the bench. That's just not for me what his strength is. And I think I've mentioned this to all of us in our group chat before, but he's an endurance athlete, and bringing him in off the bench in short windows is you're asking him to do the sprint work, which there's just not a lot of situations for me where there's a benefit to that. For me, I think the benefit of Brant Bronico is a 70 to 90-minute shift where he really puts the work in, kind of similar, obviously different position, but kind of similar to what Simon Betcher did. Put in a 90-minute shift of hard work against a back line and a midfield and just ran them ragged.
Yeah.
And so, when people talk about, the running not being able to be a factor, it was absolutely a factor in this one, and Simon Betcher led that charge. And so,
especially that flick over
and it's not because he came on for 20 minutes and did that. It's because he did that for 90.
Yeah.
Right? That's the difference. And so I think for me, that's Bronico's biggest strength is that he can do that all day. And so, there's not a lot of situations for me where his traits are going to stand out okay, I need him for 20 minutes to try to nick a goal or hold on to. It's just, that's not really, for me, what his greatest strengths are. So, for me, yes, does he usually get appearances and does he usually come in? Yes, but for me, and I've talked a lot about it in different game script, whether Abada coming out in his time and this things. I think for me, it's a real game script situation where what was the spot of putting him in too? What were you doing it for?
Yeah, absolutely. Vaughn, you were the one that actually put this into my attention. So
yeah, I mean, it's one where I think last season there was just one game. I think it was at home against Chicago. That was the only game that he made the bench and then didn't get subbed on. So it's just rare. It's just something that we haven't seen. Usually if Brant is in the roster, he's going to find the field at some point in time because of his versatility. And I think what my take on this in this game is I think his role within the club has shifted a little bit. I think he's been this jack of all trades, master of none sort of guy, and he has huge value to the roster. But I think right now in the depth chart, I think we've all assigned him as an 8. But his role that we've seen him in preseason, his role that we saw all of last year, it's really as a hybrid 10, right? And so I think what he is actually the spell for BL. I think that when Brant is going to see the field, right, when he's on the pitch, he was in preseason, we talked about how he's almost a second striker, right? He's playing so far forward, playing on that front line. And so I think in this game, it didn't call for him to be doing that. So I don't think he made it onto the pitch because then he would have been playing as the number 8. Well, that's what they brought Gianni on for, was he's going to be the spell Torre and be able to hold possession a little bit more, be able to still step forward and create a little bit from his passing. And so I think it was just the strategy in this game was, Gianni's going to be the change for Luka, and Brant's role is he's going to have some of those minutes at the 8. He's going to have some of those sub-ons for BL. Maybe BL will shift out wide at those moments, and maybe there's going to be some where he ends up honestly stepping in and being that backup for Westwood. I think we're just going to have to see how Brant's role is this year, but I think that's what I took from this game was he right now I think is the backup 10, not the backup 8.
Yeah, it's perfectly explained. The only other thing I would add in terms of this game is the positive of being able to just pull out a point. You didn't play well. I remember back the first game last year against Seattle, we didn't look great at all. We were still able to pull a point out, and things progressed through the season. And as you saw at the end of the season, some of these points become very, very important. I think, Brian, you were the one that mentioned it, that 59 for finishing 4th might be potentially like a record. I
have to look. I haven't looked into it all the way, but
which is kind of crazy. Yeah,
I mean, just the amount of points that were at the top of the table was higher than normal for sure.
Yep. Awesome. All right, let's move on and let's talk a little bit about LA Galaxy. You know, we talked about Charlotte pulling a point. New York City FC pulled a phenomenal point in LA. And by the way, I got to say, I love their kit. I guess I was like, I didn't get to catch the game live, but I saw some of it, and I'm like, dang, this is like, I guess from afar, it looked a little bit like a France reminisce. And so that's just something I wanted to say. Like, I don't really get impressed by kits a lot, but I like their kit a lot. And
There were a lot of impressive kits.
yeah.
I feel like that were dropped this year.
for sure. And so, Joao Klaus goes to LA Galaxy, gets a goal. We talk about, you know, players with pace, you know. They faced Simon in this first game. Now they got to go against Paintsville. And so I guess we'll start off with you, Vaughn. What did you make of LA's first game? Obviously, they got a red card. And so that kind of changes a bit what we can actually tell of LA Galaxy. But what did you make of them just so far this first match?
I think they scored early off of that home field advantage and new season adrenaline, and then I think they were pretty bad afterwards, honestly. I think the Galaxy showed some of their weak points. I think that they are still figuring out some things, like Hack being in midfield as opposed to the back line.
Yeah.
Picking up the yellow, Garces not being the double yellow, right? Garces not being available now for
It was a tough penalty.
It was tough. It was a soft. Benefits us, so I'm not going to be mad about it. They basically got shut out after scoring at home, and blew points at home. One of the few teams to do so. The Galaxy don't look like they're going to be one of those sides that is going to blow the top off of teams, and so I think great. We're picking them at a good time.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, obviously, the Ricky Puig news hits hard. Go through that a second straight season. Even just for like neutral MLS fans. I mean, I think having an opportunity to see a player like Ricky Puig play is a gift to this league in general. Just having a star like that. So having him not be there again, I think is a big blow, obviously for the team, but I think also for the league. And then having to try to figure out a way to replace that is probably the most difficult job maybe in MLS right now. I think based on the fact that they win MLS Cup and have the season they have in 2024, to then be wooden spoon contenders with him going down for that injury, and then having, I think it just shows how important and how impactful he is to this team and to this league. That being said, they still have to find a way to replace him, and I liked some of the moves they made this offseason. I think they went MLS-centric, MLS experienced players, Glesnes, Hawk, Joao Klaus, Eric Tommy, I think was a sneaky one that a lot of people aren't talking about yet because he's still hurt right now. But I don't think he'll be back for the Charlotte FC game. But I think he's a sneaky good move. And they had to try to do that, right? Because you try to figure out stop gaps because you still want to count on Puig for 2027. Again, like Vaughn said, like catching him at a good time because they obviously haven't figured that out yet. They hadn't figured it out last year. Still trying to work out how those changes kind of come into play this season. I think there's still going to be, it's still going to be tricky at times because you're traveling coast to coast. And I just highlighted, that no team from the Eastern Conference won when traveling west this last week. So it's not going to be a cakewalk, even though they should have advantages. Again, it kind of goes back to, can you be the more cohesive team against a team that's clearly having to bring in a lot of new pieces and trying to figure it out without their key guy?
Yep.
So there should be a lot of advantages. And I think that's just going to be the pattern that I keep hammering in until we start seeing Charlotte FC do it. But this is just another opportunity for them to prove that that continuity, that cohesiveness is the key to their success.
Yeah. What do we have to see from Charlotte FC this game, Vaughn?
Adjustments. I think that we need to see them respond. And I was going to say that for both Charlotte FC and LA Galaxy. I think it's going to come down to which team can, come off of a disappointing result and make changes that ultimately show up in week 2.
Yeah.
So this team for Charlotte FC has talked very, very positively about that cohesiveness, about being a team that can compete for the top of the table.
Yeah.
And to do that, this is a game that you need to be able to go on the road and you need to earn points and really should be able to go out and you're the better side on paper.
Yeah.
Go get all three. And I think that was always going to be the sentiment coming out of these two games against St. Louis and LA Galaxy was 2 road games. Go try and get 4 points. One of them needs to be a draw. One of them needs to be a win. I think it would have been asking too much for them to both be victories. I think it's realistic for us to get 4 points out of those 2 games. And so, all right, we didn't do it against St. Louis, so the expectation for going into this Galaxy game is go get all 3.
Tactically, is there any changes that you would be looking to make this game, Brian? I mean, obviously, Luka didn't have a great game. Andrew Privet, is there anything, or do you run again with the same kind of lineup that you had against St. Louis?
I think you would keep it pretty similar. I don't think I would make any changes this fast. It wasn't like that rash or out of place what they looked like in week 1. It looked rusty, looked like just not mid-season or end of year form.
Yeah.
Right? Which I think we were just hoping for a little bit quicker pace to getting to that. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to try to go with an 11 and figure it out, let them figure it out for a little bit. I mean, there's no damage that has been done yet. A draw is fine on the road, especially against a conference opponent. I don't see why you would make a change. It wasn't like any of the 11 performances. I know we've nitpicked, I'd say probably almost everybody at this point on the 11, at least a little bit. Nothing really stood out to where like, oh, this person has to be benched right now. I think you have to try to, for me, I would say, I mean, especially like Luca De La Torre, you got to give him more run. You got to figure out how he can kind of get fit into this group. And I think also the pieces around him need to figure out how to fit in with him. And so I think switching pieces around right now doesn't help that process.
Yeah, I think it's clear homework assignments,
Yeah.
right? I think the whole team needs to get the ball into Pep Biel more.
Yeah.
I think that Toklamati needs to be able to find space and make better off-ball movements.
Yeah.
You need Zaha to be able to find those moments to get centrally, defensively. I think you need to get more stuck in, and as a team, you can't just sit back as much. We have to play through the press well. So yeah, I think it's just I think the starting 11 is going to look very similar, but I wouldn't be shocked if things are not going well if then those subs come earlier than the 70th minute. I think now it's going to be hey, we've got to make those changes at the 60th minute to give somebody a 30-minute run and try to come on and be impactful.
Yeah, I agree with you guys both on that. I mean, like if this is the starting 11 that you're going to run with, continue to run with it. Abada over Vargas right now. Okay, continue to have Abada then. Luca De La Torre needs time. Andrew Privet's clearly the favorite center back right now, and so play to that consistency. If things aren't going well, then that's when, if things aren't going well, game 3, game 4, game 5, that's when real changes, I think, need to be made. On the bright side, too, though, I'm becoming more confident in our DPs finding a way, and so I think Zaha has shown me last year through different points of the season that he can pull us out. Pep Biel as well, and kind of seeing them combine for the first goal in St. Louis is a big positive for me, because I always preach that like DPs in difficult moments need to get you points, and they did for us this last game in St. Louis.
Yep.
Perfect.
They're on pace for 68 goal contributions. Just quick math.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, cool. Anything else you guys want to add in terms of that LA Galaxy game? Obviously, I mean, for me, if they pull out another point in LA, I don't think that's that bad. First game, okay, didn't play well but pulled the point. I think I'm in the same boat, at least for game 2, where like you're away. Ideally, I'd love to see 3 points. I don't necessarily need to see them nick all 3 points.
I do think that this game will play quite a bit differently. I mean, they don't do anywhere near as much man-to-man as St. Louis. You're going to see a different type of defending and pressing, and I think Charlotte's going to have a lot more opportunities to kind of set up their true like 3-2 build-up shape that they had a lot of trouble doing in this last game. So I think you'll actually got to get to see maybe more of like the tactical possessional stuff that Dean has been trying to work with these guys on. So I think that's one exciting bit, is that there's just going to be maybe, I don't know, I don't ever want to say there's always going to be more time on the ball, but because I mean most of these teams defend, I mean, pretty similarly in terms of how much time they give you, but they'll have at least a little bit more time to work, I think.
Well, and like I said, I think the goal coming out of St. Louis and LA Galaxy was to have 4 points from those 2 games.
Yeah.
To be at that 2 points per game average. I think following the Austin game at home after that game, you wanted to be at between 5 to 7 points. And so, all right, we're still on pace for that. But if we lose this one against LA Galaxy, you can max out at 4. I don't think you want to go into that till against Miami, 4 points. So the club show that same urgency from the first kick. I think that's the big thing that I want to see. And what we've talked about, I think that's the next evolution of this club and this team. Is it's not only winning a lot, it's how you look doing it. And I think right now, if we want to cross into that next tier, we have to be that front-footed side. We have to be that team that can impose our style on our opponent, and we need to be doing it from the beginning of the season. We need to start hot, and great. We didn't have a perfect game against St. Louis. Make adjustments and show that you have it within you to take it to that next level quickly.
Yeah.
One other advantage they actually do have we haven't talked about is LA Galaxy have to play CCC midweek this week, so they are going to be on a little bit more tired legs.
Yeah.
There's another situation that's going to come up again when Charlotte plays Miami, I'm pretty sure. And so taking advantage of those games too, when you have a team, even a good team like Miami that has to deal with multiple competitions, is an advantage to you. So I think if you can take advantage of those moments where you have a team having to deal with multiple competitions, you've got to kind of swing for the fences and get those points in those scenarios.
I mean, even saying that, I mean, if you look like they just got spanked by LAFC as well, 3-0.
Miami,
yeah. So they're still not. I mean, we talk about us being rusty. You know, that's the MLS Cup champs being rusty, and so we'll go into that a little bit about match week 1. You know, obviously we saw some impressive results.
Yep.
I think DC winning against Philadelphia, that was big. Nashville looked really good against New England. Obviously, you talked about New York Red Bulls as well.
Yeah.
What kind of game stood out to you guys? Start with you, Brian.
I mean, for me, I think it was the New York Red Bulls game. I think Michael Bradley, in his MLS coaching debut, going on the road and starting 2 17-year-olds and a 16-year-old in your especially when one of those 17-year-olds replaced Choupo-Moting, who had a good year last year, like 21 goal contributions.
Yeah, that's solid.
Obviously, you want to always say that your coach is willing to play the kids, but to actually do it, especially in your debut and on the road against a good Orlando team, and getting a win there and having the kid you called on to replace Choupo-Moting get a brace, I was really impressed with that. And then, I mean, Mehmeti he's all over the internet right now. I mean, that 16-year-old midfielder they have is also super special. That's the 16-year-old, if you're wondering. And I mean, it's an interesting group now. I think Bradley immediately hit the ground running with a lot of energy and gave national juice.
Well, and you said a good Orlando side. I think Orlando is taking a step backwards from last year where they're at. But man, credit to them. They have a bad loss and they're like, we got problems. Let's go get Griezmann. Yeah. So they're really making an adjustment there. But yeah, Red Bulls stood out. I think they had by far the most surprising result for what we saw this weekend. But yeah, really strong starts for Nashville, San Diego, impressive again.
Yeah.
LAFC playing Miami and getting that kind of result. Those were definitely the ones that stood out for me.
Yeah, I mean, San Diego was 4 goals against Pumas, now 5 goals to start off the season. So they're coming in hot.
And everybody but Anders Dreyer getting goals. I mean,
that's kind of crazy.
Pretty wild.
Yeah.
Yes. Also, you touched on it already, but, Antoine Griezmann being linked with Orlando City. And so this was posted by Tom. So, anytime Tom puts something out MLS related, there's some serious conversations to be had. It has, though, felt like Griezmann has talked to every MLS team. I wouldn't be surprised if he got linked with, a USL team by now, by how many teams he's been approached by or his agent or however it's worked out, and so if that move goes through, what does that mean for MLS? What does that mean for the Eastern Conference specifically? Because that's what really interests me. I'll start with you, Vaughn.
I don't think it changes a lot because as I said, I think they're fairly far off from where they want to be. I think some of the pieces they've lost this offseason and some of their changes, there's a lot of moving pieces on that roster right now. And so it's going to be interesting to see how Griezmann steps in. But I think it's more for the league, right? You've got Griezmann, you've got Mueller, you've got Son, you've got Messi. We've been linked, guys like Lewandowski's been rumored to the league. So I think just the profile of the league is growing, and that's something that's really exciting. And I think the World Cup in summer is going to lead to even more of that. We didn't James Rodriguez, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that was his name.
it's just really, really cool to see where the league is at, and that Griezmann coming to the league is a awesome, cool moment, but it's not like a blip. It's like, oh no, what really won't affect things in the East.
Dang.
That's crazy for MLS.
I guess Vaughn saying that Griezmann's a mid player. Do you agree with that, Brian?
Well, I think it's going to impact the that Orlando-Miami game a lot. I think that rivalry game, obviously they're playing, I think, March 7th. So they're not, it doesn't sound like there's any chance Griezmann's a part of that if they get the deal done. But that next time they play each other, I think that's a really, really exciting game. I haven't looked at the schedule, but ideally that's during that whole rivalry week and really helps build that up. I think there's some really big moments there for both clubs, league-wide as well, but both clubs there specifically also. And Orlando does have some moving parts, but I think Orlando's, at this point, they have the track record to show that they have a pretty high floor. Like, under Oscar Pareja, they just get 50 points. Like, that's pretty much what they do. And so that's what I would still bank them on, at least. And then what can Griezmann bring to elevate them to the next level? And I think if he can do that as that one DP spot they got open, we'll see. But I think they have a high floor just because that's what Pareja has shown to do. And I think when you do that for consecutive seasons, I start to really respect that. And so I think their floor is there, and it's just, can Griezmann be enough of a ceiling to take him to that next spot?
Yeah, I'd imagine for MLS too, it's good that like you could say, Antoine Griezmann versus Messi, right? Because that's what drives things, right? Like Son versus Messi, right? Although there's a whole supporting cast that goes behind that, but I think from an international perspective, if you're pulling more of that fan base as well, you're like, okay, Orlando with Griezmann versus Messi with Inter Miami. Let me check this out real fast,
And then I think it also does, we talked about Nashville a little bit, how well they're playing right now and how good they honestly look, right? So now they have not only the Miami game to highlight how good they can play, they now have an Orlando matchup where they, if Antoine Griezmann's there, where international eyes are going to be on that kind of game, and you get to see a team like Nashville who doesn't really get the notoriety for how well it looks like they're going to be playing this year. And so I think for teams like that, it's a good moment to be able to have another game on your schedule where you can really highlight who you are.
And I think that's the big point too, is also it's still highlighting the different ways that you can build a roster in the league and be successful.
100%.
Right? Like, what's really cool about Nashville and the way they're doing it is, they're doing it with the assistant coach from the U.S. men's national team.
Yep.
They're doing it with a couple of these under the radar
Tag Seth and Yazbek.
With a former MVP in Mukhtar, or with Sam Surridge coming out of the championship, with Christian Espinoza coming over in a big move from San Jose. It's a very different kind of build, and I think it highlights the place that the league's at.
Andy Nahar as well, don't forget him. So
Fair.
one last thing that we can touch on, I guess we have time for it, is Morrison, Ajimanuel, Cleary, and Andrew Johnson to first team contracts. Brian, talk to us. Obviously, Dean Smith mentioned that he was impressed with them in preseason, right? And so a local being left out is also big, right? So what do you make of these signings to the first team?
Well, I think for me, it was Koulibaly and Uchegbu, all three on big transfers that all kind of seemed to phase out towards the end of preseason and kind of went into that second, that extra game they had that was like the closed door one where they're like, this is to kind of get the other guys kind of ready who aren't quite tactically up to snuff yet. And those guys featured prominently in that game. And so I think that was my first red flag. And then I asked Dean, I was like, hey, you have a roster spot open, who's kind of getting that? He said Aloco was going to Crown Legacy. I was like, okay, well, it has to go to Ajiman, I think, then, because he was getting a ton of reps. And so, sure enough, it did. Their roster is now full. So I think that's the first thing, is they've got 20 senior roster spots filled. They still have an extra international roster spot, so if they can free up a spot, they can make some moves there internationally. And then Will Cleary, Andrew Johnson. I was really interested in how quickly Andrew Johnson got in the fold because he just joined Will Cleary as well, but Andrew Johnson was drafted last season and then immediately found minutes in preseason. Will Cleary, I think it's interesting because he kind of has been bounced around both sides as right and left back throughout preseason, and was with Stanford, which is known for being a team that just has a high work rate and kind of fits, I think, Dean's kind of style of play. Obviously, both those guys are going to be featuring at Crown Legacy most of this season, I'd imagine. Yeah. Not really at the first team, although Will Cleary has still getting first team reps. So they kind of seems like they want him around at least.
Yeah, I think it's also just establishing our pipeline.
Yeah.
I think it's making sure that, hey, yes, we have these roster spots, and it's sending that message as well that, guys, you can earn your way onto this first team. If you work within the system, we're still going to be leaning on the draft, right? I think that's very important to note. And so I think it's just part of the club ethos and the way that we're building. And it's going to be more interesting to me to see how these guys ultimately get minutes, how they get reps, and how they look when they get those moments.
Yeah, I mean, just to me, it's just a little bit of a red flag that Koulibaly hasn't really got into the team. Aloko's now going to Crown Legacy after the amount of money they spent on him, and also he played in the African Cup of Nations. Yeah. But we'll see. It's still early for some of these guys. I mean, Tokolomati didn't come straight into the team, right? Yeah. And so he got some time in Crown Legacy and then was moved up to the first team.
Yeah, but Nympha's going to go straight from Crown Legacy straight to Bayern. So, that's the message for these guys too.
Maybe, and so.
Although, speaking on Nympha a little bit, sorry, I just to cut you off, Jorge, but I do think these signings signal that it almost seems like a question mark for me about the academy in general right now. Like, these contracts aren't going to academy players, and it seems like there's been a little bit. I remember the momentum that was happening early on, like Brian Romero getting that first contract, and then seeing the field with Chelsea, and then Nimfasha soon after that, and then Jack Neely, and it signed, and then Aaron John, and it just seemed like there was kind of some momentum building. And I don't know, for me, it seems like between there's a gap in how the academy players are kind of getting. I mean, Neely's still obviously hanging around a bit, but hasn't really broken into the first team much. But it seems like there's a serious gap in how players are getting from the academy to legacy, and then from legacy to the first team.
Well, I think it's a note that Timos has there in the comments. It's talking about borderline malpractice to spend $6 million and then not give the guy a shot. No, I think what we're trying to be is a development club, right? We brought over Tommy Wilson from Philadelphia. We've got championship level coaching. I think that the team has made a serious investment and is trying to do things in a little bit different way from a lot of other MLS clubs. And some of that includes spending big on some guys that are going to be at that Crown Legacy level, knowing that you're going to be part of their player development. And the goal is that you're going to have those hits like Ajimang, those finds like Malanda, that, okay, yeah, you're going to have some of these guys that you're going to buy low, sell high. Yeah. Some you're going to buy high, try to sell higher. So you're going to spend $6 million with the goal of him ultimately turning into a $10 million. You're trying to strike gold, and I think that's really what's happening from a business side here. It's not a matter, and I think this is the other thing is, I think we have assigned a lot of times those dollars spent on a transfer fee relative to what value you should be getting out of performance, and I think we're just doing a different approach from a business side of things than that.
Yeah, but like if you spend $6 million on a player, when he's gone, he better be $10-12 million player, right? And so I just think right now we have more misses than hits in that. But I mean, obviously, like again, we're gonna give them time, right? Yeah. To me, like I'm good with that. It's after 2 or 3 seasons that I'm really like more on a player. So
my one question is just, I know that I guess development just has. There's different ways to approach how you develop players in different scenarios. I think the one thing for me is just like Nimfasha Berkimas is here right now.
Yeah.
Clearly interested in Bayern. If Charlotte is truly a development and player development club, he seems like, to me, the clear and away ideal candidate.
That's a great point.
To be getting development minutes
in MLS,
with the first team here now, like kind of what we see with the if you see the true development, like clubs in this league that
That's
are
a
developing
fair
players from the
point,
ground
yeah.
up, there seems to be a clear gap in approach. I'm not saying like
But you
what
can
they're-
move him up too early, and
know.
you diminish his value if he doesn't
Yeah.
show up.
I'm just saying that there's just.
Yeah,
it's-
but like
there's
if Bayern
different ways to
Munich
do it. It
is
doesn't
pushing for
seem-
this guy, like how is he not getting minutes at Charlotte FC? You
Yeah.
know, and so
I just think there's just different ways to approach development, and academy for Charlotte doesn't seem to be their clearest like pathway of what they want. And I mean, we'll see long term, right? We'll kind of see how that affects them.
for sure. Finally, some score predictions. Vaughn, LA Galaxy, Charlotte FC. Give us a score prediction and who's scoring for you.
I'm going to go 2-0 Charlotte. I'm going to go goals for Toklamati
Nice.
and for Abada.
I would have been surprised if you didn't say about it. That'd be great for him. You
I did
know?
it for you.
Brian.
Yeah, I think 3-2 win to Charlotte. I think
Nice.
it's going to be a high-scoring affair. I am definitely concerned with Painsel and Peck and their speed out on the wings against Charlotte's back line right now until they kind of work out positioning and how to cover each other and all that. But I do think Charlotte pulls out a win. I think they're going to be able to also do work against LA Galaxy's back line. So 3-2. I'll go Toklamati finds one. I'll give Abada one, too. I'll give Abada. He
Okay.
needs one. The guy needs one.
Yeah, he
does.
does.
and I think Zaha. Let's just go across the front three.
Love it, love it. I'm gonna go with a 1-1. I feel like they'll still be rusty, and I think we can score. But I think just noticing game one, I feel like there's gonna be moments that LA is gonna have, and you know they're not gonna be as nice as St. Louis was.
Well, you're backtracking off of the. You were expecting high scoring.
Yeah, I wasn't. Now I'm kind of taking that back, you know. And so 1-1, I gotta go with Tokla Goat, you know, or Tepper Mati is what Dean's calling him nowadays. With that said, Vaughn, where can people find you?
On socials at VI Pullman.
Nice. And Brian?
Yeah, you can find me on X at Bam Mauer Media. All my written content, topin90.com. You can find me. You know where to find me.
For sure. Jorge Gonzalez, we're top bin on all our social. Thank you guys. Episode 51 over and out.